Jodie and welcome back to my channel and welcome to my 2025 TBR. I'm so excited to film this video. I have picked out 25 books that I want to read this year and I'm hoping that I actually get to the majority of these because I don't usually do well at these yearly TBRs, but I feel like 2025 could be the year that I do. So I have kind of put together a selection of books. These are all books that for the most part I already own. I think there's maybe one book on this list which I don't own a physical copy for, but it's on my list still. But the rest I do own physical copies of, and we have a variety of different books. There's a lot of sequels in here. I have like a complete trilogy. I have some like first books in a series and just a whole lot of different things going on. So this is predominantly fantasy because that is mostly what I read, but I'm so excited. There are so many popular books in this stack that I just have never gotten to, and everybody hypes them up and I just want to know what the hype is. I definitely do suffer with FOMO, I cannot lie. I am one of those people. So I feel like we should kick off with a very hyped book, and that is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. Now, yes, I have not read this book yet. Everyone and their nan read this book last year. Everybody loved it. This is a romantasy. It has dragons. And I did get the indie paperback of this book and I was really excited to read it. But it's quite a chunky fantasy book and I know the world building is quite intense to begin with. And at the time, I was kind of like, I'm not in the mood for intense world building, and it just sat on my shelf. And then it got really hyped and then I was kind of like, oh, I'm scared to read it now, and I've put it off. But 2025 is going to be the year that I read this book, mark my words, because I own like 5 copies of it. Yeah, you heard that right. 5 copies of a book I have not yet read. If you're new here, that might be surprising, but if you're not new here, then you know me. You know how I am. So yes, I do finally want to read this book this year to justify the stunning editions of this book I do own. This is the beautiful Fairy Loot edition, which I absolutely love with my whole heart, and I just have such a good feeling about this book. I feel like I'm gonna love it. Admittedly, I do feel like I might struggle through the beginning because I've heard that it is very heavy on the world building. This book has its own like a glossary. I'll see if I can find it and show you guys. But yeah, it does have like quite a big glossary from what I remember. Yeah, there's like pages of a glossary and stuff at the back and characters and all of that stuff. But I do love a fantasy world that is very expansive, that the author really doesn't spare a single detail on. Like, I really love it when we find out like every single like magical lore in this world, like exactly how it works, so there's no plot holes. I like knowing all the different kind of like creatures, all the different characters, the different landscapes and kingdoms, all that stuff. I do really enjoy that in a fantasy book. I love it when the world is really big and there's always more to learn. However, I don't like info dumping, so I'm hoping it's not too info dumpy and it's just a case of kind of getting your head around the world and the structure of this world and how the magics work. So I am a little bit scared of that, but I feel like all in all I'm really going to enjoy this. Now honestly, I don't know a whole lot about this book if I'm being completely honest. I know there's an assassin, I know there's rebellion, I know there's dragons, and I know there's romance, and that's pretty much it. So yes, that is literally all I know. I know the second book does come out this year, I think, towards the end of the year, so I would love to read this book and then read the sequel. And I don't know, everyone just raves about this, so many people have recommended it to me, and I just have major FOMO, so I'm very excited to finally read this year. The next one we have is kind of like another hyped one, and that is What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. So this one is a kind of historical fantasy-esque vibe. I believe it has a bit of mystery, we have romance, it is rivals to lovers from what I remember, and it has the Mummy vibes. And The Mummy is one of my all-time favourite movies. Like, since I was a kid until now, I've been obsessed with it. Like, I love those movies so freaking much. I even have pop vinyls of the characters. I just love it. Like, it is just one of my favorite things. I had a weird kind of like obsession with Egyptology when I was a child, specifically like ancient Egypt. I always used to beg to go to the museum to be able to see all like the stuff they had on display there, and I just found it fascinating. At one point I did try to teach myself hieroglyphs, but I was 8. And I don't think it was very accurate, but I was just obsessed, and ever since I've just always had this weird kind of interest in ancient Egypt or any stories that are kind of set there, and I've just heard so many good things about this one. So I did start this in February but I just didn't finish it because I was in a reading slump. I literally only read like the first chapter, so I never got far enough in to really form an opinion. This says here that it's a historical fantasy set in 19th century Egypt, filled with adventure, a rival lover's romance, and a dangerous race. So from what I remember, our main character's parents, I think, have died in mysterious circumstances, and she receives a letter to tell her so. And I think they might have been like archaeologists or something along those lines, and they were out in Egypt, and she goes to Egypt to figure out like what happened to them, and I think that's where she meets her rival, who becomes her love interest, I assume. And she has this ring that has like ancient magic, and I don't know, it just sounds so intriguing. So many people I know have read this and absolutely adored it, and I just feel like I will too, because like I said, I love anything that has that kind of like Egyptian mythology in and magic and just all of that stuff, and I love rivals to lovers, and this one just seems like a book unlike I've ever read before, so I'm very, very excited to read this one. Okay, this next one is an extremely popular book which I actually have read once before, but it was several years ago, and I did not love it at the time. Like, I think I gave it 3 stars. However, I have since found out kind of like what the romance plot is, and I also just kind of want to give it another go because I know this series is actually really good as a whole. It's just like the first book isn't great, like from what I remember, but I really do want to reread it, and I want to read the rest of the series because I feel like collectively I will really, really enjoy the story. It is a dystopian YA fantasy, and that is Shatter by Tahira Murphy. So yeah, I read this the first time and I didn't love it, mostly because of like all the like crossing out. Like, it just really bugged me when I was reading it. I'd never read a book with that in before, so I don't know if it was a case of like me just not really being familiar with that, but I just didn't love it. Like, I enjoyed it, but I found it quite repetitive. But now I know what the romance is, I am on board. I am ready to devour this entire series, and I feel like I will really enjoy it when I finally do. But yeah, I can't really remember too much of the plot. I just know our main character, I don't think she can touch people, and if she does, she kills them. And then there's this general, I think, called Warner. It's kind of like enemies to lovers. It's a dystopian world, and that is kind of all I remember, and that's kind of all I want to remember. I really do want to go into the series like with kind of like a fresh kind of view on it and not knowing too much, and just have a fun time, and obviously get through the rest of the books in a series because so many people do love it, and I feel like I could be one of them, but we shall see. But I really want to give this book another go, and I'm thinking this will be the year. So next is another book that I actually started reading and never finished, and again, because of the slump, I think I got maybe like 3 chapters into this, and that is The Ever King by LJ Andrews. I think this is a dark romantasy, and essentially it's kind of like a pirate-esque romance. It's enemies to lovers, and I think from what I remember, they kind of met when they were children. He was like locked away because he's like evil, or his people are, or something, and then she accidentally sets him free again, I think, and then he kidnaps her on his pirate ship. I think that was like the vibe, but I can't completely remember. But I really enjoy going into fantasy books not knowing too much about them, so thankfully my memory is terrible and I often forget the plots of books even when I've started reading them. So I'm planning to go on to this one again, not really knowing too much, and just have a really fun time. I feel like I will like this one because so many people love this book whose taste I have like a similar taste to, and I don't know, like I was really enjoying it last time. I was just in a really bad slump. But yeah, this does have slightly darker kind of themes to it, so I am really looking forward to reading this one. Then next is a sequel, and that is Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh. I think I read Binding 13 in 2023, and I really, really enjoyed it when I read it. I was actually so surprised by how much I did enjoy that book. It's a bit of a darker romance. It's set at like a school in Ireland. I think this is set during like 2005 from what I remember, so quite a different time period with a lot of different social norms and stuff, and there's a lot of language in here that wouldn't be okay today. And there's a lot of different things happening in this book, but our main character, Shannon, was extremely bullied at her old school, and she moves to this new one, and she ends up kind of entwined with, I think he's like the rugby captain or like the star of the rugby team, and his name's Johnny. And she's also kind of facing a bit of bullying there, but she also deals with a lot of abuse at home. So there are a lot of triggering topics in this book, so do check out the trigger warnings if you're thinking of picking this up, because there are a lot. So it does definitely have very sad and dark tones in it, but I really enjoyed the first book. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, and I flew through it. and I've been meaning to pick this one up for so long because of how the first book ends, but for some reason I just keep procrastinating and reading it. So I might even do a reread of Binding 13, I don't know, but these books are very long and the font inside is very, very small, but I really want to read this one. I do own the next 2 books after this one, but this is like the main one that I really want to get to this year. So hopefully I can, and it's probably going to destroy me, but you know, it'll still be fun, I hope. Okay, next is another book in a series, and I would love to complete this series this year, but I'm trying to be realistic because these books put me through it. And the last book traumatized me so much that I haven't picked up book 5 in like 2 years, maybe even 3, because one of the characters, 1, really annoyed me, 2, I cried, and 3, I saw a huge spoiler for something that happens later in the series that I'm so not looking forward to reading. Like, I really don't want that to happen, even though I know it does. And for that reason, I've been like putting off reading it. Plus, when I find a series that I'm absolutely obsessed with, I try to make it last for as long as possible. And I usually put off like a lot of the books in a series because I just don't ever want it to end. So it is a habit I need to break this year. But that is Zodiac Academy book 5. This is Cursed Fates. Now, these books are chunky, but they are very fast reads. This is one of the best fantasy series I've ever read. It does have bully romance, so I would say check trigger warnings, and bully romance isn't always for me, but I feel like it does work in this world. Like, it's just the kind of personality and the way things are in this world. Does that excuse how awful some of these characters are to each other? Absolutely not, but it is very entertaining. It's full of drama. I love the world itself. It definitely does kind of feel like Harry Potter-esque, like the world, I mean. And you'll know what I mean if you read this book. It's kind of like adult Harry Potter, but with a lot of romance and a lot of bullies. I just love all different types of creatures that exist in this world. The 2 romance subplots we have going on, and then the 2 main characters who are like twins. And they are these like long lost heirs to the throne. But then we have, I think it's 4 or 5 heirs in the school already who obviously don't want them to come and take the throne from them. So there's all of that stuff going on. It is just a really, really good series. The first book is okay, like, it's a fun time, but once you get through the first book, I tell you now, you will not be able to stop reading. I don't know what is in these books, but they are so addictive. But like I said, the last book just really got to me, so I was like, I'm gonna take a break. And then that break just continued for like 2 years. So I'm so ready to dive back in. I'm gonna read up for like a recap of the first 4 books, or if anyone knows where I can find a good recap, please do let me know down below in the comments. But I honestly can't wait to dive back into this series, and there's a very good chance I might binge the rest of the series. I own all of the books except for the 9th book, so I still need to get my hands on that. But yeah, there is a very good chance that I will binge read this entire series this year, and I'm so freaking excited. I just loved the first 4 books so much. Okay, so continuing the theme of sequels, we have The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King by Chris Broadbent. This is the sequel to The Serpent and the Wings of Night, and I think from what I remember, in this kind of world, which is A Crowns of Nyaxia, it's like 3 duologies and then there's some novellas. So I really want to read this to see what happens to the characters from the first book. I think I read that back in 2023. I think I did a whole spoiler-filled reading vlog, which you can find on my Patreon, because we did it as a book club pick, and I had such a fun time reading that book. Like, I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It definitely has kind of like Hunger Games vibes. It has like games in it and vampires, and I really like the uniqueness of the vampires in this world, and it was quite dark, and it was enemies to lovers, and just such a good time. Like, I really, really enjoyed the world. The way the world building was kind of taught to us was in such a good way. Like, I loved that part of it so much, and the writing was just so addictive. Now, I've read Daughter of No Worlds by Chris Broadbent, and I definitely do feel like her writing in this world is so much better. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of Daughter of No Worlds, but Serpent and the Wings of Night, I gave 5 stars. It was incredible, and I've been meaning to read this for so long. Like, when I read that book, this just came out like a couple of weeks after, and I was so excited to read it, but then I was like, oh no, because like then I have to wait like ages for another book, and I put it off like I always do, and here we are in 2025. So I need to just read it, and I'm very excited. But again, it might lead to a reread of Serpent and the Wings of Night, but we shall see. Very, very excited to read this nevertheless, and I just want to see what happens to these characters. Okay, next we have the last book in a series, and this is Capturing the Devil by Kerry Maniscalco. This one I will be saving for October. I always read one of these every October, except for last year I was supposed to read this, and I didn't. So I want to read it this year. I love these books so much. They are very good kind of like mysteries, but they lead you to believe there could be a supernatural or paranormal origin to these mysteries, but there isn't. So it's very clever the way it's done, and there is an incredible romance across these books. And just trust me, go and read this series. It's the Stalking Jack the Ripper series. This is the 4th one, and this one takes place in Chicago. They're trying to find a serial killer. Very, very excited to read the conclusion, but also sad that this series will be over. So next we have Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. Now this one is on my TBR because I'm trying to get through some of the books I've had on my shelves for a while, and I know I've put this one on countless TBRs. Now this is a duology, so I will likely read the 2nd book as well, but I just haven't included it in this video just in case I don't get to it. But I would love to read this one. I've heard so many good things about this. It's supposed to be magical and whimsical and full of romance, and I think it's inspired by mythology as well, which makes me very, very excited. And I've just had it on my shelf for a while now. I don't know exactly how long. When did this come out? I got it in a fairy loot box, so this came out in 2021. So yeah, it's been about 4 years now, so I need to read this book soon, and I'm hoping that I will get to it this year. But this edition is just so pretty. I love it so much, and yeah, I just feel like this will be a very whimsical and beautiful story. So following on from that, we have this duology. So we have Daughter of the Moon Goddess and Heart of the Sun Warrior by Sulin Tan. Now I actually have read this one. When I'm filming this video, I have ticked one book off the list so far, and I gave this 4.5 stars. This was so good. If you are a C-drama or K-drama fan, you will love this. It just has all of that historical fantasy like drama goodness, and they travel via cloud in this book. It is so good. The romance, there is a love triangle. It's really good. It's very much a Fairy and the Devil if you've watched that drama. That is the vibe of this book. It is magical. It is very kind of intoxicating, and I just loved it. It's inspired by the Legend of the Moon Goddess, but we have her daughter in this book and the kind of things she faces, and it is just very good. So I am currently listening to the audiobook for this one, so hopefully I can take it off my list soon, because these have also been on my TBR for a very, very long time. But I love this. It was so good. Okay, so this next one is another romantasy, and from what I remember, this is definitely the vibe of she is the villain, which I love. And that is the Book of Azrael by Amber V. Nicole. So this one is actually my Patreon book club pick for the months of January and February. So I will be filming a vlog for this, and I'm so excited to read it. I feel like this is a book I'm going to absolutely love, because from the tropes I've seen listed and just the overall aesthetics and like the vibes that people talk about with this book, it just seems like it has all the things that I love. Apparently it has a very like headstrong and badass FMC, which I love in a fantasy book, and the romance is like enemies to lovers and just like really, really good. And like I said, it's morally grey, it's villainous, and I don't know, I just have such a good feeling about it. Like I just really do feel like I'm gonna devour this book, and I can't wait. I don't know too much about the plot, if I'm being completely honest. I'm definitely going to be going into this kind of just like having a fun time. This was very kindly gifted to me by Claire, and I've just been so excited to read it ever since. So I'm so glad this one, our book club pick, it's going to be our first one of the year. I don't know, I'm so excited, honestly. And Jamie bought me the 2nd book, so I have a feeling I'll probably want to make my way through that immediately after I finish this one. But if you were interested in reading this with me, you can head to my Patreon. It is always linked down below, and you can find a Discord server for this book. And like I said, there will be a reading vlog as well. I'm very, very excited about this. Then next we have Twisted Games by Anna Huang. So this one is one I'm putting on my TBR because I read Twisted Love, I think in 2023. There seems to be a pattern here, but I think it was 2023, and I've been meaning to read the other books in this series for so long now. And everyone loves this one. Everyone loves the love interest. I think his name's Reese in this one. And it's a bodyguard romance, and I love that trope so freaking much. So I've been dying to read this, and I typically read mostly fantasy, but I do enjoy a romance every now and then. So I had to include at least one romance in this list, and this is the one I decided to pick. And yeah, very, very excited. Then next we have Guild by Raven Kennedy. Now this one, not 100% sure if I'm going to get to it. I've had these books for a while. I do own most of the books in the series, but I've heard so many mixed reviews. But I do want to read at least the first book and just get a taste for the world and the writing style, because I know this is a very beloved romantasy series, and I just want to start ticking off those really popular ones and just kind of explore at least the first books in these series to see if I vibe with them or not. and I don't know, it's just one I really want to read. So I popped it on my TBR just in case. I did see that Rachel from the Ravenhead Reader recently did like a whole vlog reading this series. Haven't watched that yet, but I feel like that's probably going to motivate me to pick up this book. So I am kind of excited for it, and you know what, the font is actually quite big in this book, which I do like when the font is big. So I might just like make my way through this at some point this year, but this one is kind of like a tentative one. Like I'm not 100% sure, but I still wanted to include it. So next we have Trial of the Sun Queen by Anisha J. Tully, and this one is another one I've seen on BookTok so much. Now I think this one has a deadly game. On the back it says 10 women, a deadly contest, only one can win the Sun King's heart, and it says get ready to discover your new favourite fantasy romance series. This addictive TikTok sensation is perfect for fans of Sarah J. Maas, Fourth Wing and The Hunger Games. I love all three of those, so I have very high expectations, but I'm so excited to read this. I feel like I'm going to be absolutely obsessed with this book. Like, I don't know, I've just got such a good feeling about it. I love books that have like trials and games in it. It's one of my favourite like tropes in a fantasy book, and I'm just so excited for this. So yeah, let me know down below in the comments if you've read this and you would recommend it. But I have a very good feeling about this book. Next we have another romancy, which is Blood and Steel by Helen Shura. This one has been on so many of my TBRs again, which is why I thought I'd put it on this one. Like, why not put it on one more? This one I don't know too much about. All I know is that it's a fantasy romance. I think it was Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction on Instagram made me want to read this. She loves this author's books, and I don't know, I just keep seeing it around Bookstagram all the time, and I'm very much in my romanticy kind of era, and it's been on my shelf for a while. Like I have had this for at least like over a year now, and I don't know, just for some reason I always pick it up and I'm like, I'm gonna read it this month, and then I just don't. But like I also do really want to read it, so I decided just to include it anyway because it is a book that I'm super excited for, and I've tried to make sure all the books I actually put on this list are books I'm genuinely really excited to pick up. And for some reason this one is just calling my name. No, literally nothing about it that I can remember, but because of how highly people have talked about this book across like Bookstagram and BookTok and BookTube, from the people that I follow whose like reviews I trust, I feel like I'm gonna really enjoy it. And just something about it, I don't know, every single month I pick it up and I'm like, I'm putting this on my TBR, so it needs to be read in 2025. If I don't read it by the end of the year, please shout at me, okay, because I need to read this book. Okay, so next is a trilogy, and that is this trilogy by Adeline Grace. So we have Belladonna, Foxglove and Wisteria. I have read half of Belladonna, but I never finished it, and it's not because I wasn't enjoying it, I just for some reason didn't finish it, and I really want to. It's a gothic fantasy series, and the personification of death is literally the love interest. So that is the main reason I want to read it. I don't know what that says about me, but anything with death in, I'm there. I want to read it. So I'm very, very excited to finally, hopefully, tick this trilogy off my list this year. And I feel like I will absolutely love these books when I do read them. But yeah, it's been a long time coming to finally read this entire trilogy. Okay, next is another book I started and didn't finish. I promise I actually do finish reading books. It's just the last year or so has been a very bad reading slump, and then like 2023 was like the onset of that reading slump. 2024 was the actual slump. So there's a lot of books where I like pick them up and then pick something else up. You know what happens when you get in a slump. So this was one of them. I started it when it first came out because there was a lot of discourse surrounding this book, and that is Lightlark by Alex Aster. I really wanted to see what it was like because so many people were just review bombing this book for no good reason, and I was like, what is the fuss about? So I did start it, and from what I remember, it was fun so far, but the editing was not great. But I really want to read it because I know Emmy loves the series, and I trust Emmy's opinions and reviews when it comes to books, and just the way she's spoken about this series just makes me so excited to read it. Now I have heard the third one is not very good, and it has now been extended to a 5-book series. So I'm not too sure if it's going to be one of those where the series has been dragged out for no reason. I really don't know. I know there's a love triangle, and I already know I'm Team Grimm because he's the dark-haired love interest. And we all know how I feel about those. So I'm definitely Team Grimm. But yeah, I am still excited to read this one. Just a little bit scared when I do get to book 3. But I would love to at least read the first book. If I could read all 3, that would be great. But I have decided to at least put this one on because I do want to finish it, considering I started it and never did. I literally got up to page 64. So we did have a lot of tabs in there though, so that was a good sign. But I do definitely want to read this year. And then we have 3 Stephanie Garber books. So we have Caraval, which is the first book. Now, I have only read Once Upon a Broken Heart. I've read it like 3 times now, and every time I loved it. And I just think that's one of the most whimsical and beautifully told fantasy books I have ever read in my life. I honestly just adored it every single time. But Caraval is like the original trilogy, and then you've got Once Upon a Broken Heart. So I really have been meaning to read this for so long, and I just want to at least read the first book. Now you can read Once Upon a Broken Heart without having read this, because I certainly did, but I do really want to read at least the first book, and then I want to finally finish off the trilogy for Once Upon a Broken Heart. So we have The Ballad of Never After and A Curse for True Love, which these two I definitely want to read more so than Caraval, but hopefully I do get to all three of these, but definitely these two, and I'm so excited. And then the last book is the book that I don't physically have at the moment, and that is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I'm looking at my little spread. Oh no, wait, there's two. I actually have two books. Good job I looked at my little spread in my journal. So yeah, Legendborn by Tracy Deonn I really want to read, because someone I used to work with loves this series so much and talks about it all the time, and I really want to read it. It's like based off an Arthurian legend, and it's like witchy and there's magic, and I think it's set, I don't know if it's an academy, a university or a school, but it's set on like one of those three, and I love books like that. And I've just heard that the magic is really good in here, and the scope of the world and all of the characters, and I just really want to read the series. Like, I'm so intrigued by it. So many people love it, and it's been a series I've kind of wanted to start for a while, and I just don't know why I haven't. So I definitely do want to read at least the first book in 2025. And then the last book I have is City of Gods and Monsters by Kayla Edwards. Now I think this one is a dark romantasy, and I've just been seeing it all over my For You page on TikTok. So I really want to give it a go. I want to start reading more dark romantasy books, and I just feel like I'll have such a fun time with it. It's quite a chunky one, but I've seen like Laura talk about it. I think it's on her TBR for the year, and a few other creators that I just really like. And whenever they get excited about a book, I want to read it. So I put this on my list because I feel like I need at least one wild card on here, and that is definitely it, because I kind of added it to this list without knowing anything about it. But I feel like I usually enjoy those books the most. Like, the books I go into not knowing anything about are always the best. Like Quicksilver, for example, one of my favorite reads ever. Didn't know anything about the plot, and I had a great time. Literally going into it knowing as little as possible was the best thing, and I just love doing that with fantasy books. So that is definitely the idea and the vibe for 2025, and trying to go into books with as low expectations as possible and just have a fun time, not read into things too much, and hopefully actually read a lot of books, and a lot of good books. I'm definitely hoping for quality over quantity this year, but I would love to read a lot more books than I did last year, because as I said, last year was a terrible reading year for me, and I just didn't read much at all. I was in such a bad reading slump. I didn't really have many reads that really stood out to me last year, especially in comparison to like previous years where I've had like absolute favorites. So I'm really hoping to discover a lot of new favorites this year, to try out a lot of new authors, to get some of the books read off my shelves that I've had for a few years now, and I'm just so excited about the entirety of this TBR. Like, every single one of these books just makes me like want to scream with giddiness because I can't wait to read them. So if you have read any of these books that I've mentioned, please do let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you rated them. Please do let me know what is on your TBR for this year, because I would absolutely love to know, and it's a great way for not only me but other people in the comments to find books to read, because whenever anyone recommends a book, you bet I add it to my list. So please do leave any recommendations or your TBR for the year down below in the comments. And if you don't want to do that, then leave a little tulip emoji in the comments if you didn't make it this far, because I have little cute tulips on my cardigan, so it will match. But I hope you guys did enjoy seeing all of the books I'm planning to read this year. I will link all of these books in the description box down below, along with a link to my Patreon, and that's where you're going to find early access to videos such as this one. You will also find exclusive content such as reading vlogs, day in the life vlogs, hauls, all different things like that. We also have a Discord server. We do a bi-monthly book club, and we also do a monthly readathon together, which is one of my favorite things ever. I love it so much. There's also occasionally live shows with the reading sprints over there, and lots of other things. It's all over my Patreon, so if you're ever interested in any extra content from me, you can find it there. But yes, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you're all having a wonderful start to 2025, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!